The idea that they don't have principles is absurd, but it runs through Boris Johnson like Blackpool through a stick of rock. A man who has lied to every employer he has ever had. A man who has demonstrated weapons-grade disloyalty to every leader under whom he has ever served. A man who has lied to both of his wives and all of his mistresses. A man who apparently dreams of leading and could lead, enjoys the support of the grassroots of a Conservative Party that is supposed to care about family values, but somehow continues a ludicrous love affair with a man who has a love child running around West London. That is, if you will, evidence that in his personal life, his political life, and his professional life, he is utterly devoid of anything that remotely resembles morality, principle, or integrity. And still, he continues. Still, he bats away for nobody and nothing but Boris Johnson. This line here, I'm not exaggerating. The more you think about it, the more utterly descriptive it becomes, illustrative it becomes. To some extent, all politicians are gamblers with events. They try to anticipate what will happen, to put themselves on the right side of history. That's quite incredible. And it explains beautifully, for anyone still puzzling over this phenomenon, how he could have written 2 articles on the eve of nailing his colours to the Brexit mast. He wrote 2 articles, one of which explained why he'd elected to support the Remain camp. 2 columns written in their entirety for the Daily Telegraph, and only at the last moment did he decide which way to jump. Only at the last moment did he decide which which gamble he would take, which anticipation of what will happen would put him on the right side of history. And he got it horribly wrong, because he thought Remain would win, but by backing Leave, he would have shored up the support of the Eurosceptic wing of the Conservative Party forever, and he would have been perfectly placed to replace David Cameron if and when he walked. So Johnson gambled with the country, with the stakes entirely his own ambition. He lost, oddly, although they won the referendum, and now he's coming back by throwing collective cabinet responsibility under a bus and demonstrating disloyalty to Theresa May that Michael Howard and David Cameron would have been able to give her a masterclass in. But that's not the worst bit of this Churchill biography. This is actually disgusting, what I'm going to share with you next. This is actually indicative of a man who looks at the greatest Prime Minister this country has ever had and sees a chancer. He sees an opportunist. He sees a self-interested gambler trying to put himself on the right side of history. He doesn't see a man who smelt much earlier than most just how rancid the stench coming from 1930s Germany was. He doesn't see a man who actually put his political future on the line by standing up so robustly and so completely, not only to Nazism, but to attempts in this country to appease Nazism. There we go, we got to 12 minutes after 10 without mentioning the Daily Mail. But that was what Winston Churchill was doing in the 1930s. An awful lot of support for some of Hitler's ideas among the aristocracy, among the vested interests in this country. And Churchill, a scion, of course, of Blenheim Palace and the Duke of Marlborough, Churchill stood up to them, even when it looked as though it could scupper his political career. He moved around a lot, Churchill. It's part of the reason why he wasn't trusted by some members of the establishment. He oscillated from the Liberal Party to the Tory Party. But the idea, and I'm coming to the line now, the idea that Winston Churchill's opposition to Nazism was an opportunistic career move is, I mean, it's utterly anathema to all decent, right-thinking people, but it's Boris Johnson's theory, because this is what he wrote in the next line. Churchill put his shirt on a horse called anti-Nazism, and his bet came off in spectacular fashion. So Johnson's narcissism is so complete, so utterly overarching, he cannot even conceive of Winston Churchill's opposition to Hitler being a matter of pure principle. He cannot even imagine that somebody could stand up to something as vile as Nazism without self-interest being the key constituent of that position.